President Trump's bold move is representing a drastic departure from the Obama administration's response to the Assad regime's actions of crossing the red line after former President Obama opted not to strike Syria following that 2013 chemical weapon attack. Joining us right now is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Colonel, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Your reaction this morning.
Well, look, this is, I think, President Trump's Grenada moment. For those who remember the Reagan years, there was a malaise coming out of the Carter years that was like a pall. It was a complete parallel to President Obama's lack of alacrity, if you will, regarding foreign policy. So we now have a sea change that is very clearly stating that we're no longer going to be sending pallets of cash as a method of foreign policy. You may get a cruise missile when you violate major agreements. And Maria, let me be very clear here. There was 2 major agreements violated within the last few days. The use of these chemical weapons violates the agreement that the Russians and the United States made back in 2014, where John Kerry, former Secretary of State, got on TV on MSNBC and declared that all these chemical weapons were gone. And more importantly, the chemical weapons agreements we have with the Russians, saying the Russians would not permit weapons of mass destruction to be used anywhere. So this is, you guys mentioned about how President Obama wasn't paying attention. This is worse. President Obama was actually, I think, responsible for some of the bad things, because he pretended to negotiate it all away, and I believe they knew that these weapons were going to either be remanufactured or they never really completely left back in 2014.
Yeah, because he enabled it. Brian.
Lieutenant Colonel, how much more difficult, how much more complex is the situation today because President Obama failed to act in 2013?
I think we had an opportunity 4 years ago when this first started to work with the Turks to do an incursion from the north into Syria to create a safe zone and to do a no-fly zone. That moment long since passed and became far more complicated because we now have ISIS, al-Nusra Front, all these other organizations, these militia all over the place controlling terrain. So what was essentially a small cancer has grown into a huge cancer, metastasized. So the thing we must do now is understand that we have to walk things back quickly. This didn't happen overnight. This took time to get there. We have to do the same thing. So what we're doing with Iraq, with General Dunford and General Votel, moving through Mosul, trying to work with our coalition partners there, has to continue to push ISIS out. And now we in some form, still have to work with the Russians to get into Aleppo and to begin bringing back. We must always remember, and I'm not for the arbitrary use of military force. We must always remember the ultimate goal here is to retrieve and sustain order. Ungoverned space is what's created the problem. We have to bring back governance to that space.
Yeah.
Good point I just want to make about Russia and what we heard about their coming up and saying, no, we're basically closing down this deconfliction channel, is that as a former fighter pilot, I know that it's not something we need to have. It's something that's nice to have, but it's not necessarily something that we need to have. It's good to be able to deconflict with them in the air, but we have plenty of sensors, we have plenty of technology to be able to run our operations without them if we need to.
Well, look, I believe we will continue to transmit on that channel. I know for a fact from my contacts at the Pentagon that we did notify the Russians. We didn't necessarily notify the Russian government. We did notify the Russian military we're coming in. So, and we'll continue to do that.
Colonel, do you see this as the beginning of a new campaign or new program, or is this a one-off?
No, there's a new strategy coming. Secretary of Defense Mattis gave a new strategy, a new approach to this. I believe we're going to see a new implementation. And again, the Pentagon strategy is going to change a bit. We're going to see some changes.
All right, we'll leave it there. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.